Right now, surgeons are navigating instruments through human lungs with a $60 Xbox controller.
The Monarch platform from Johnson & Johnson allows doctors to conduct robotic-assisted bronchoscopies.
The US military aims laser weapons with one too.
The laser software is designed to look like a video game, like Call of Duty.
And it's operated with an Xbox controller.
A toy, trusted with things that cannot go wrong. 10 miles from any hospital, a driver just drifted out of their lane because a $60,000 car's touchscreen made finding the defroster a 4-second eyes off-road task. We handed a toy to the military, and it works perfectly. We handed innovation to the car industry, and people are crashing. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern, and it tells you exactly what we've been optimizing for. You've definitely walked up to a door, grabbed the handle, and pulled, and it didn't move, because it was a push door. That half second of confusion, the small irritation, that's a design failure. The door gave you the wrong instruction. A handle says, pull. If pulling is wrong, the handle shouldn't be there. Designers call this the hint. The shape of an object communicates its purpose before you even make a decision. Pick up an Atari joystick and there's nothing to figure out. It's a stick. You push it the direction you want to go. There's one button. You press it when you want something to happen. The motion maps directly onto what happens on screen, the interface disappears, and you stop thinking about the controller and start thinking about the game. Nobody in 1977 called it a design achievement. It was just obviously correct. That principle ran through basically every physical control interface built between the 1970s and the late 1990s. Dials for volume, because rotating your wrist is how you adjust something incrementally. Buttons for discrete choices, because pressing down is how you commit to something. Physical knobs for heat and radio, each one doing a single job, each one findable by feel without looking. The joystick kept getting refined through this whole era. The rigid Atari stick gave way to the thumbstick on the Nintendo 64 in 1996. Smoother, more responsive, easier on the joints. Then Sony shipped the PlayStation dual analog controller in 1997, with two thumbsticks sitting symmetrically under each thumb. One controlled where you moved, the other controlled where you looked. Two fundamental human actions separated into two physical inputs, each one corresponding naturally to what your body already knew how to do. That controller became the industry standard almost immediately, and it's barely changed in nearly 30 years since. Someone at the Pentagon was paying attention to all of this. Not the high scores, the muscle memory. A generation of soldiers had already spent thousands of hours on these controllers. The interface was good enough that a 19-year-old could operate a complex machine with it on day one, with almost no training. That's a military logistics problem, and the joystick solved it without anyone designing it for that purpose. Here's how you know it actually worked. The military uses it. Not some custom-built, government-contracted control system. Actual, ruggedized versions of the PlayStation and Xbox controller, used to operate military drones, bomb disposal vehicles, and weapons turrets. The US Army's Locust laser weapon system is aimed with an Xbox controller. The British Army uses them. So do Ukrainian forces directing armed drones. And in medicine, the FDA approved a bronchoscopy system that uses an Xbox-adapted controller to navigate instruments through a patient's lungs. This interface started in airplanes, it moved to living rooms, and got better through 30 years of gaming. Now we trust it with the things that cannot go wrong. That's not nostalgia, that's not people clinging to the familiar out of habit, that's evidence. The old stuff wasn't primitive. It was optimized for human hands and human instinct. It just didn't look impressive enough to survive what came next. The touchscreen doesn't tell you anything. Pick one up and it's a flat rectangle of glass. It has no moving parts, no physical texture that changes from zone to zone, no shape that suggests a function. It is, on its own, completely inert. Whatever it does is entirely determined by the software running on it, which means it's entirely dependent on the decisions of whoever wrote that software. And you have no way of knowing what those decisions were until you've already made a mistake. Think about the sounds you don't hear anymore, the heavy thunk of a car door lock, the click of a volume dial landing on a number, the snap of a toggle switch committing to a position. Now tap a glass screen. Nothing. No resistance, no sound, no confirmation that anything happened at all. That silence is information being removed from the interaction. Go back to that car from the opening. Cold morning, you need the defroster on. In a car from 2005, you reach for a physical knob, turn it one click, and your eyes never leave the road. Your hand found it by feel, the same way it found it yesterday and the day before. In a car from 2026, you tap the screen, get the wrong menu, tap back, Find the climate section. Tap again for the defroster. 3 deliberate inputs, each one pulling your eyes down, while the car is still moving at 70 miles an hour. The old knob took half a second and 0 attention. The new interface takes 4 seconds and all of it. That's not progress. That's the same road, the same hand, the same need, and a worse outcome. That's the fundamental trade the touchscreen asks you to accept. Infinite flexibility in exchange for 0 inherent communication. And for a lot of things, that trade makes sense. Sending messages, browsing, pulling up a map. These are tasks with no physical equivalent, so a physical interface wouldn't help you anyway. The touchscreen is genuinely good at those things. But then we started applying it to everything else. Car dashboards were the most visible casualty. Physical knobs and buttons got pulled out and replaced with touchscreens because they looked cleaner, because the interior suddenly felt modern, because a flat surface photographs well in a car ad, not because it was faster to adjust the temperature, not because drivers made fewer errors. Physical buttons teach your hands so your brain doesn't have to. The Konami code, up, up, down, down, left, right, started as a cheat code in a 1986 spaceship shooter called Gradius. It became famous through Contra, where it gave you 30 extra lives. But the interesting part isn't the lives. Millions of people burned that sequence so deep into their hands that they could execute it cold, years later, on a controller they hadn't touched in a decade. That's the ceiling of what a physical interface can build in you. Knowledge that lives entirely in your wrists, that costs nothing to use, that fires before you even think. Now think about the last time a software update moved a menu you used every day. That same automatic knowledge fired at nothing, and unlike the Konami code, you can't recover it by picking up the old controller. The old controller is gone. What happened in cars happened everywhere. Nicholas Nyland curates the history of gaming interfaces at the Finnish Museum of Games, so he spent years watching how control design evolves. His verdict on where we've landed: touchscreens are scarily one-size-fits-all. That word choice matters. Not inconvenient, not suboptimal, scary. Every device and every app is trapped behind the same flat glass, but each one has its own set of rules you have to learn from scratch. The phone works one way, the car works another. The hospital kiosk works a third. You're not building expertise across these things. You're just constantly starting over. And someone who studies this for a living finds that trajectory alarming. That contradiction sits at the center of where we are now. The same culture that demands frictionless app design, that will one-star a food delivery app for having a confusing checkout flow, accepts touchscreen dashboards in cars traveling at 70 miles an hour. We've decided that the feel of a button is an old problem. We treat it like something to be removed rather than something to keep. And the reason that happened isn't because designers got lazy. It's because we started measuring something different entirely. So why did this actually happen? The number that actually won the argument wasn't usability. One screen replaces dozens of moving parts. No more individual buttons to build, no more dials to test, and no more physical pieces to break. Since it runs on software, any mistake can be fixed overnight with an update. You don't even have to touch the car.
If you have a bunch of complexity on the dashboard, you will have to renew all of that again. Instead, you can just tell your software team, like, hey, just update the UI, add some new features, etc.
From a production standpoint, the touchscreen didn't win a design debate. It won a budget meeting. But there's something the balance sheet doesn't capture. When the knob disappeared, something you'd built over years disappeared with it. Not knowledge you could write down, knowledge that lived in your hands. The specific amount of resistance before the dial clicked. The exact position your wrist moved to without thinking. You weren't just using the car, you were an expert in it. Using that skill cost you nothing. It was automatic. It was done before you even had to think. The software update erases that without ceremony. A developer moves the climate menu to a different tab, and overnight your muscle memory fires at nothing. You have to relearn your own car, and the next update might make you do it again. The deeper irony is that trying to do everything made these tools worse at doing anything. Think about a Swiss Army knife. It has a blade, a screwdriver, a tiny pair of scissors, and a little hook for getting stones out of horses' hooves. It's impressive. It's also worse at every single one of those jobs than the dedicated tool it's imitating. A real knife cuts better. A real screwdriver grips better. A Swiss Army knife isn't a great knife. It's a tool made of trade-offs. It does many things okay, but it does nothing perfectly. A touchscreen is the same deal, except the stakes are higher, because you're not just opening a wine bottle with a subpar corkscrew. You're adjusting your defroster while driving. A tool built to do anything isn't great at any of it. And the joystick survived because it never tried to be anything other than exactly what it was. Nobody in those cockpits or operating rooms asked whether the controller looked clean or photographed well. The only metric was whether the person holding it could do the job without dying. Better looking, better to manufacture, better to update, just not better to use. We didn't just accept worse technology, we got trained by it. Every time you relearn a menu, fumble through a new interface, or glance down at a screen while driving, you're doing the machine's job for it. You're working hard to fix a design that was never built around you. The joystick fits the hand. The touchscreen expects the hand to fit it. That's the swap that happened, and most people never noticed it was a choice. If you want more of the built world decoded like this, subscribe to the channel.